forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March.
Again, rebounded by Indiana. The game is over.
For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk,
Oh, he just shook the gravity.
and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger Ten. Here's Steve Dace.
Greetings. Welcome to this week's episode of Bigger Ten. I'm Steve Dace alongside my co-host, but never partner, the one and only Aaron McIntyre, who, with the new digs here, is not looking as Nosferatu as we are accustomed to, which is unfortunate given the spooky season, but nevertheless, welcome back to the earthly plane, my friend. How are you?
Doing well. Although I might here in the next 12 hours or so, depending on how bad this cold gets.
Are you fighting off a little bug?
I wasn't this morning. I am right now. So, bear with me as I struggle to stack sentences on top of sentences, but I still think my disdain for Iowa's offense is going to bleed through in everything that I do, and that's just going to be enough to see me through this.
You know, if you want to go ahead, you're even wearing a hoodie, right?
Yeah.
All right, you're wearing a hoodie. If you want to go ahead and start slurring your words and not know where you are or
There's
how
a
to
certain
talk,
Senate
you could run for Senate in
I know.
America.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, is this on? Anyway, let's move on. Let's get to it. It's our Big Five on Bigger Ten, our Big Five topics. And hey, let's begin at the top with the Purdue Boilermakers, or should we say Road Warriors. When you look at road swings on the conference calendar this season, I don't think we'll see a team, just because I don't know that you'll have anybody else have the opportunity to do this. I don't think we'll see a team, Aaron, put together better back-to-back road victories than what the Boilermakers just did at Minnesota, and then what we just saw them do last week as well. I mean, I know we just did this thing 2 weeks ago where we asked, did Minnesota take a vice grip to the Big Ten West because they had the schedule favorability? Well, I don't know now, man. I mean, it kind of feels like Purdue maybe is in the driver's seat after this road swing, or at least as much as you possibly can be in the Big Ten West.
Yeah, I don't think we should have. I don't know if anybody necessarily was, but sleeping on Purdue. Yeah, they had some disappointing losses, but look at Illinois and Purdue and how close they are, especially Illinois, being 4 points away from being undefeated. But Purdue as well, a close loss to Penn State on the very last drive of the game on week 0 or week 1 or whatever that was, week 1. And then a close loss on the road where they just completely melted down. I guess that would have been the excuse to say, hey, maybe we should start pumping the brakes on this team. But look how close they are to being undefeated right now. And these are not just some ho-hum teams. Yeah, Minnesota was without Mo Ibrahim, but you still got to go, like you said, on the road in Minnesota, beat a well-coached team, which, you just can't overlook that fact, and then go on the road against a Maryland team that's not last year or the year before's Maryland team. That's a couple of really good wins. I can't really see how you could expect much more come Big Ten play, or at least conference resumption of play, since they played Penn State week 1, than what Purdue has done.
Purdue has now done what we talked about Minnesota accomplishing a couple of weeks ago, where they had the road win against a Big Ten East team and then didn't have to play 2 of the 3. Remember, since we went to the East-West divisional alignment in 2014 or 15, every team that has won the West but 1 year avoided playing 2 out of the 3, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. And so, like Minnesota, they got the early road win for Minnesota. It was at Michigan State. Purdue now has the road win at Maryland. They now don't have to play Michigan or Ohio State. They've already played Penn State, but they've got the head-to-head tiebreaker by virtue of beating Minnesota at home. So
that's a big.
The schedule
that's
tilts in their
invaluable.
favor
Yep.
now, right?
Yep, absolutely. And this is something I'll talk about more on Would You Rather. But man, like you said, just reiterating what you said about Minnesota, they looked like a shoo-in. Now, for all intents and purposes, they need a little bit of help, which in the Big Ten West, they might get.
Yes.
They might get.
We might still spin the wheel of destiny a few more times here in the Big Ten West.
But it's crazy every single year. Why do we do this? Especially in divisions like the Big Ten West. We fall for the banana in the tailpipe every single year. And, can't be blamed when it's Wisconsin, when they've got just a reloaded roster, but they have not the last few years. And so we think, oh, this team is just an absolute lock. Oh, this team's an absolute lock. And then by the end of the season, it's nowhere close to what we thought it was in early October.
Let's go to our next topic here in the Big Five on Bigger 10. That's the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're just setting records every week at this point. I mean, we got C.J. Stroud has more 6-touchdown games than any quarterback in the history of the conference. Mayan Williams had the 5 touchdowns the week before. This is the most points scored in consecutive games by a team in this league since Michigan's Mad Magicians under Fritz Chrysler that were the dominant program in college football post-World War II. I don't know. Do you think Ryan Day sets out to do this stuff? That it's part of their recruiting pitch and everything else? Because I kind of do, and I don't begrudge him for it at all, because they do seem to go out of their way to keep chucking the ball, keep handing the guy, the ball, throw a guy the ball when he's on the brink of a record. That they are very recruiting centric at Ohio State, and they recognize all these records they set all the time absolutely fuels their recruiting narrative.
First of all, I am guilty of something. I don't know. Maybe you fall into this trap as well, playing NCAA football 14 as much as I know you have over the last few years. But when I play NCAA football 14, I try to run up the score all the time. If I know a guy's close to setting a record, I throw the ball to him all the time.
I turn injuries off and run up the score.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So when these records are broken in real life, I'm like, it doesn't hit me as much as it probably should. So hats off to the Buckeyes for doing that. But actually, if I were Ryan Day, I would make this a part of my recruiting pitch, because guess who else is playing video games? The people you're recruiting, and
right.
Especially more so come next year when the new NCAA football game is released as well. I don't think that's the primary reason, but I certainly think it doesn't hurt anything.
What were you doing October 16th, 2011? Do you remember? You were 14 years old?
I don't know. That seems like the date that Iowa, or around the
18 years old. You were 18 years old, right?
That seems like the date that Iowa beat Michigan State in overtime or double overtime off of an interception, which I watched in a random studio in Minneapolis.
Okay. I bring that up because that date is the last time that the Illinois Fighting Illini were ranked in the top 25 of the AP college football poll.
Unbelievable.
The week of October 16th, 2011. What a job Brett Bielema has done turning that program around halfway through year 2.
Yeah.
Where would they be if the referees had not screwed them on that replay against Indiana? Remember, week 2? They took that touchdown off the board, and then Illinois ended up losing by 4 because they had to settle for the field goal, and that play was the difference in the game. Bielema right now has to be the odds-on leader for Big Ten Coach of the Year. However, now you're looking at Tommy DeVito with an injury, might be a few weeks. Arthur Sitkowski comes in at quarterback.
He was fine.
Yeah.
They should have beat Iowa by 10 points that game. They really should have. I thought the way he played at the end of the game. Yeah, it wasn't great, but I don't think Illinois needs their quarterback, at least not this season, to be exceptionally great. They have some really talented wide receivers. I said after, I think, week 0, actually, I thought Illinois was going to beat multiple people they probably shouldn't beat. And so far, you got to beat Iowa, but Wisconsin, that's looking better and better. Illinois, you got to be high on them. You really do. They just play really sound fundamental football. And by the way, I was correct about the date and opponent. I was incorrect about the outcome. And I didn't even look at this up before the show. It was actually October 12th. No, that was November 12th, 2011. So I think 2010 is what I was thinking about. That's embarrassing. But anyway, if you're Illinois, and if you're an Illinois fan, hats off to you. Hats off to you. Waiting 10 years to be actually relevant again. There were a couple of seasons there where you mentioned Illinois and Kansas in the same sentence together, and not for the right reasons, or Illinois and Kansas and Rutgers together in the same sentence for terrible reasons. And look, this year, at least Kansas and Illinois, they're resurgent. So you got to be wary if you're playing Illinois, if they're on your schedule. That's just not an easy W like it has been, obviously, for the last almost 10 years. And if you're an Illinois fan, congrats, hats off to you.
One of my all-time favorite stats, I think it was when he was a freshman at Rutgers, Arthur Sidkowski, as the starting quarterback at Rutgers, finished 16th in the Big Ten or something like that in passer rating. There are only 14 teams in the Big Ten. So there's that. All right.
He won the game.
Midway through the season, I put together some power ratings on where I think the Big Ten is right now at the halfway point of the season. So, Aaron, your thoughts on how you think these rank? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Am I hovering around the target? Obviously, I have Ohio State number 1, Michigan number 2, and Penn State number 3. Your thoughts on my power ratings of how I have the Big Ten power rated right now, teams 1 through 14.
Well, I can't really, in some respects, power ratings, and really in most respects, power ratings are hard when you've got a lot of terrible teams. It's like, how in the world do you even parse who should be ahead of whom, especially when you've got the entire Big Ten West, it seems like, trying to vie for some of the worst teams in Power 5 college football. Overall, I can't really argue with you that much. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State's in the top 3. I don't know how you really argue with that. Michigan, I don't think has looked demonstrably better or even better at all than Ohio State. At the same time, I can't really say Penn State deserves to be ranked ahead of Michigan. Going down to the bottom, Michigan State coming off of last year to only be power rated anywhere, including Bigger 10, just a cinch above a terrible Northwestern team. That's got to leave a mark. Indiana and Rutgers, again, this is parsing here, but, why not put Indiana above Rutgers? But again, who knows? It's a coin flip if those teams, if those teams play any given day. Nebraska, you just don't know what you're going to get. And by the way, can we talk about Nebraska real quick? Did you watch that game? The Nebraska.
I did not. I followed it on my phone. I was on date night, but I followed it on my phone.
I'm a sicko, so I watched most of that game. I'll tell you what, it was simultaneously sad, but a little endearing the way that last Nebraska offensive drive was coached. For one thing, Rutgers was taking timeouts, obviously. They were down. Nebraska took, I think, 1 or 2 timeouts just to run plays, just to make absolutely sure that they did not mess up a close game. It's sad. It's sad that just to get lined up correctly, they had to take multiple timeouts on their final offensive drive. But at the same time, it's a little endearing of Mickey Joseph that he was kind of had the wherewithal to make sure, let's not mess this up, one foot in front of the other. Anyway, I digress. I can't really argue with the rest of this power ranking here, because once you get past, and this is in our feedback of the week, but once you get past 3, it's like I don't know. Let's just spin the revolver here and see what we got. I think Northwestern is demonstrably worse than basically anybody else. Michigan State, I don't know. They're pretty bad, but can you count on Michigan State just manhandling Indiana? I can't. So I can't really argue with the rest of these.
Final thoughts or final item here in our Big 5 on Bigger 10. It's the biggest game of the year, or the biggest game so far this year, we should say, in the Big 10. And that is Michigan, number 5 in the country right now in the AP poll. Penn State ranked number 10. The 2 largest alumni bodies in all of college football, 2 of the biggest draws, 2 of the biggest blue bloods. They square off for this week's big noon Sunday game. Now, Penn State, under James Franklin, has never won a game at Michigan Stadium when there was actually a crowd. They have 1 win here, and that was the COVID year. And a couple of them, they got absolutely housed. But they come here with a much more explosive, dynamic running game than they've had since Saquon Barkley. They come in off a bye, although if you look at recent trends, the bye week fallacy against the spread doesn't hold up the way that it did 10 or 20 years ago. But Michigan also is going to play. This is going to be by far the biggest game that J.J. McCarthy has played in. He's been allowed to really have a lot of time to throw the football, to practice a lot of poise. When he has been rarely pressured, he's had the quickness to get out of the pocket and find somebody down the field. I still think a lot of people aren't sure what they know about these 2 teams. Everybody's talked about Michigan's schedule, how soft it is, and it is. It's only 111th in the country, according to Sagarin. But Penn State, for having names like Purdue and Auburn on its schedule, according to Sagarin, Aaron, is only 70th in the country. So there does seem to be kind of a mystery surrounding this game and what we think we know about these two teams. Your thoughts?
First of all, this is 4 straight big noon kickoffs in a row for Michigan. That's bizarre. Are you getting sick of the 11 a.m. games? As long as they end up in a win, I actually love the 11
I don't care if they play at
if
4 a.m.
If I'm at home,
Yeah.
if I'm going to the game, I'd rather do 2:30 or night. But I see this game playing out a lot like the Michigan-Wisconsin game last year. Now, that was earlier in the season. That was on the road. But I think for the most part, this is probably going to be the first competent offense, or at least above average offense, that Michigan has seen this year. So I could see this going back and forth for the first 2.5 quarters. I think Michigan is just too dominant up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage, with the exception of the pass rush on non-obvious passing downs. I just think they're going to be too dominant. I think last week was a classic look ahead in sleepy Bloomington for Michigan. They're just going to be able to kind of flex and move the ball down the field when it really matters in crunch time against Penn State. So I would say the 7-point spread is what I last saw. I would probably take Michigan all the way up to 9.5 in this game. I don't think it's going to be coming down to the very last play of the game, but I've been wrong before. I just don't see that happening here.
Well, from your lips to Bo's ears, we'll come back, play our weekly game of Would You Rather here next. Steve Deace here, and we get asked all the time, how can we support what you guys are doing here on the channel? Well, one great way to do it is by supporting us on our Patreon. And by doing that, you might get a little extra support yourself as part of our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Pause that right there, Aaron. Scroll up just a little bit. Look at what that record is in Major League Baseball as of the time we are recording this. Over 100 games. Over 500 as we get down to the stretch run of the season. In our NFL picks contest, we started 5-0 in week 1. You may have an opportunity to more than earn the money back that you donate to us each week here on our Patreon page by signing up and getting access to our exclusive information, like our exclusive handicapping picks in various sports. So thank you to all of you who support us each week here on Michigan Podcast and Bigger 10. And if you'd like to join them and maybe make a little extra money in the process, patreon.com/Michigan Podcast for as low as $5 a month. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Time now for our weekly game of Would You Rather here on Bigger 10. Aaron, we start with you. Would you rather be Brian Ferentz smiling on the sidelines with Spencer Petras in the final minute losing at Illinois, which did happen, by the way. I watched it live. Or Kirk Ferentz congratulating your putrid offense every time it comes off the field, which I have come to the conclusion Kirk is doing that because he's glad to get that offense off the field so that the defense has a chance to score. Which of those two would you rather be?
Brady Hoke still clapping. Next. Would you rather be a team that recruits at a high level but has only seen success at the level that they should be successful at once in the last 15 years? Or would you rather, punch up and make it to the Big Ten championship more than once in the last 15 years? In other words, would you rather punch up or punch down, Steve?
I'd always rather punch up. Always rather punch up. That feels like a veiled shot.
Maybe
I'm wrong.
No, I just woke up this morning, chose violence. Decided not to give somebody who has been nicer to me than I even ever deserve no benefit of the doubt whatsoever. So, take that the way you want to.
Would you rather be Mel Tucker or Tom Allen right now, the last two Big Ten coaches of the year? People forget Jimmy was National Coach of the Year last year, but Mel Tucker was Big Ten Coach of the Year. So these are the last two Big Ten coaches of the year. They are currently in charge of the worst two teams in our two of the worst teams in our midseason power ratings. And in fact, the other guy that was up for Big Ten Coach of the Year in 2020 was Pat Fitzgerald. That's the worst one.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's throw him in there, in fact. So those are the last three guys to be under consideration for Big Ten Coach of the Year. They are the bottom three teams in our current Big Ten power ratings. Which of those three guys would you rather be right now?
Tom Allen, I could make the same. I could make the same argument that I'm about to for Pat Fitzgerald, but Tom Allen, because I don't feel like the expectations are ever going to be super high at Indiana. So and I still think that he can be a fairly decent coach. But then again, the time that we saw him really rise above expectations was a year that we just have learned we have to completely throw out. Pat Fitzgerald, harder to recruit at Northwestern, but you've got a lot of job security there, which Tom Allen doesn't have at Indiana. Mel Tucker, though, that's the highest pressure job, because there are expectations that come with being the Michigan State head coach. Plus, you've got however many millions of dollars.
$95 million guaranteed.
Yeah, contract that's hovering over you all the time.
I don't know, man. I'll take that pressure. $95 million guaranteed, no matter what I do for the next 10 years. I can handle that pressure, brother.
Nah, that's a good point. Final one is for you. Would you rather bet Minnesota or Illinois to win the Big Ten West right now? I omitted Purdue.
The injury to DeVito, I would rather. In fact, I think Minnesota will win the game at Illinois this weekend. I would rather still be Minnesota. I still think they're the more complete team with the most depth. But the fact that we are even having this conversation, I mean, go back in August and say that we would be sitting here in mid-October and this would be a legit point of discussion on the show. No one would have bought that. It's a compliment to Brett Bielema and what that program has accomplished that we're even in the stratosphere of having this conversation legitimately. So there you go. We'll come back, wrap things up with our feedback of the week and this week's Twitter poll results in a moment. This week's Twitter poll results. We asked you, hey, Michigan and Penn State play the first Big Ten Conference game this season, pitting two top 10 teams against one another. Who do you predict to win? 69.6% of our following voted for the Wolverines. 30.4% voted for Penn State. I think this margin maybe should have been a little closer than that, but what do you think of the vote?
I'd agree with that. I mean, like 55 to 45, or 55 to 45, something like that. I'm sorry, 55 to 60 or something like that. I think 70% of our audience is maybe coming over from the Michigan podcast side. So, I think it'll be, do I think 7 out of 10 times Michigan would win? No, it'd be in the 5.5 to 6 times or 5.5 to 6.5 times kind of range, something like that. But I think out of, 10 times, they would win more than half of them.
Let's get to our feedback of the week. This comes courtesy of Reggie Blevins, who says there's a huge gap between the Big Three and the rest of the conference. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And we'll learn more about Penn State this weekend as well, because that was an impressive win at Auburn, and it still is, given what the expectations were coming into that game. But we'll see really what they do against an opponent that's markedly on paper better than them. So we'll see about that. But yeah, even if it's a little more lopsided than 10, 13 points, I still think there's a marked difference.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode. We're back at it again next week to break down all of this action and look ahead to what will be we're at the halfway point of the season now. So we head into the second half of the season next week. Of course, we'll have a lot of coverage on that Michigan-Penn State game as well. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, 5-star review, follow, share, wherever you watch, like here on YouTube, or listen, like here on iTunes or Stitcher. Help us to find more Big Ten sports fans just like you. Thanks to all of you that have done that for us already. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter in between episodes at Bigger10 as well to keep up to date on what we think about all things Big Ten and more. For Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Dace. We'll see you the next time right here on Bigger 10.